Good evening, everybody. So my name is Nathan Johnson. I will be speaking today about a Frenchman named Jacques-Louis Marquette. So I do not have any French-speaking experience, as well as I do not know any native languages. So there's a couple words that I will most certainly mispronounce, and for that I apologize. But there's really nothing I can do about it. So when those come up, feel free to laugh. It's fine. Um, I don't intend to offend anybody, but if I do, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to kind of get into it. I've got some notes over here that I'm going to be reading from, and then I have the camera up as well. So today I will be speaking about a Frenchman by the name of Jacques Marquette. He's a French missionary and explorer, and is best known as the first European to see and map the northern portions of the Mississippi. So it's kind of a big deal. And the basis for my fascination, as well as the main topic of this discussion, is specifically him discovering the Mississippi. Because that was one of his greatest life achievements. But first I must tell you a little bit about the man before I tell you the glory of his deeds, followed by the expedition with some notes from his actual journal that he wrote, and then I will finally follow that up with a touch on his life post-expedition. So kind of what he did after the expedition. So without further ado, Jacques Marquette joined the Society of Jesus at age 17 and became a Jesuit missionary shortly thereafter. After working and teaching in France for several years, he was assigned to New France in 1666. And the plan was to convert indigenous people in America, as well as to continue to inform colonists and kind of make sure they're still following the correct practices and procedures of the Jesuits. He was very proficient in learning new languages, which made him a very important tool and key for speaking with the indigenous populations that he encountered, learning their languages, learning their customs, and then being able to talk with them about Jesus Christ, in addition to actually understanding and talking about their customs and stuff like that. He helped found missions in present-day Michigan at Sault Ste. Marie in 1668, in St. Ignace in 1671, and then at La Punta on Lake Superior shortly thereafter again. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date here. But these connections that he had with these native populations would also help to prepare him for his trip. So upon hearing about the inclusion, his inclusion in the expedition, Marquette had this to say. I'm going to read the direct quote here so I don't get anything wrong. This is specifically from his journal that he wrote about the expedition. So he said, "I was more delighted at this good news, since I saw my plans were about to be accomplished, and since I found myself in the blessed necessity of exposing my life for the salvation of all these people, and especially of the Illinois, who had very urgently entrenched me." So the quote goes on, but it talks a little bit more about himself, so I decided to curb it there. And speak more about the expedition, not specifically him. So on May 17th, 1673, Marquette, almost 36 years old at that point, and his friend Louise Juliette, 27, were chosen to lead an expedition involving 5 men and 2 canoes. Those 5 men being 5 in addition to the 2. So 7 total Frenchmen left on this expedition. And they were off to find the direction and mouth of the Mississippi River, which natives had called the Mississippi, the Great Water. They were sent by the governor of New France, Frontenac, who was the vice regent for Louis the 14th. So they sent these explorers down lakes and rivers to try to, in the hopes of discovering a passage to China. Now, many people before them had attempted to find this fabled Northwest Passage. And like many before them, they would not find it. But their alternative mission, if the Northwest Passage did not exist, they were tasked with perhaps finding a route for passage from St. Lawrence all the way down to Mexico. And so they left, setting out with no foreseeable end to their journey, because they had no idea when, where, and if they would find the end. And all they had was some Indian corn and a few smoked meats as provisions to their 7 men and 2 canoes. So they would follow a crude map drawn from the information given to them by the Indian tribes before setting out. So they asked kind of the people, the natives, if they had any information about the Great River or anything about the tribes that they would meet along the way, or anything at all that could possibly help them on their journey. And there wasn't always positive vibes, I guess, is one way to put it. But there was always kind of a difference in opinion, because despite sharing a goal to find the river, the 2 leaders' ambitions, Juliet and Marquette, were very different. So Juliet was an experienced mapmaker and geographer, so his primary focus was on finding the Mississippi River or the Northwest Passage. And Marquette, as he himself put it in his journal, I, the father, have long predetermined this undertaking, influenced by a most adherent desire to extend the kingdom of Jesus Christ and to make him known and adored by all peoples of that country. So his primary mission was just to spread the word of Jesus Christ to everyone that he met along the way, which kind of put him at odds with Juliet a little bit. But they were still friends. They still had the mission that they had set out to find the Mississippi or the passage. So they would begin their trip at the northern tip of Lake Michigan and travel the lake westward to Green Bay in present-day Wisconsin. And they would ascend the Fox River, which they would then have to remove their canoes from the water and carry them across the land to the Wisconsin River, which is a trip of about 2 miles or so through marsh and oak plains. And the group then set out again for the Mississippi River through the Wisconsin River. So they briefly stopped at a few places, sometimes for the night, sometimes for a couple nights. A few times they stopped at Native American settlements. One such stop, they were with a native party who kind of warned them about the dangers to come and the land that they would have to travel through, and how there was warriors that are hostile to any foreigner, and dangers of the river itself, that monsters live there that devoured men, and a demon swallowed up any who went near it. So kind of superstitions and stories that they had heard and that they were passing on. But one key point was that they did not want their friends, Juliet and Marquette, to continue on their path. But of course, the explorers they did continue. So the expedition went down the Wisconsin River, as I said, and they again met another native group at kind of the southernmost French explored area, and is home to 3 distinct group of Native Americans. So these people supplied them with mats for sleeping on, so they could settle along the Mississippi, as well as guides to take them to the Mississippi River. And on June 10th, they left again the Native American settlement that were friendly to the French, and they left in sight of a great crowd who could not sufficiently express their astonishment at the sight of 7 Frenchmen alone in 2 canoes, daring to undertake such an extraordinary and hazardous expedition, because they understood the dangers that would be presented to these Frenchmen as they explored. So along the journey, they are discovering many new species of wildlife, plants, and rices. One such example is the American buffalo, which they killed once and ate it. And also by June 25th, they had seen signs of men, and they would follow these tracks, and they would follow it on land, and they would find the Illinois Indians. And so the chief of the Illinois Indians welcomed them into their village, and gave them kind of several gifts because they shared their story and what they were doing. So these gifts included a slave boy, as well as a peace pipe, which would play a very strong role within the native society. In fact, Marquette believed that they showed more adoration and more respect to this peace pipe than they did to the little slave boy that they were given. And Marquette and Juliet would stay for the festivities and stay for dinner and a banquet, as well as to watch the rituals that these natives would perform for them, specifically with the peace pipe. And Marquette would take several notes about what he observed in his journal, but I do not have time to kind of discuss all those fully. So if you're interested in kind of Native American rituals, check out his diary. It's translated to English. It has a lot of very descriptive and good information in there. So in total, Marquette and Juliet led their party down the Mississippi to the mouth of the Arkansas River, within 435 miles of the Gulf of Mexico. They would encounter several natives carrying European trinkets, and they feared an encounter with the explorers or colonists from Spain. But finding these people with these European kind of products reminded them that they are not the only people out in the world. They're not the only people that are settling America. And they run into a group of natives who are very hostile to them until, of course, they produce the peace pipe and the natives witness it for what it actually is. Only then do they stop the attack and become friends with the Frenchmen who are sailing through. They explain, the natives explain to Marquette and Juliet that the white explorers are only a 10 days journey farther south from them. And these people could only be the Spaniards in the eyes of the Frenchmen. So it would be dangerous to go on any further. So they decide to turn around without having seen the end of the Mississippi. So they ended the trip and turned back and returned to Canada by way of the Illinois River. And it would be only Juliet that would return to Canada. Marquette would stay in Green Bay and because of illness. And that illness was dysentery that he had contracted on his mission. So he would not return back to Canada to explain the exploits of kind of their journey and kind of the ending fruition of the journey. And he would actually die on May 18th, 1675, en route to St. Ignace. So his life was in devotion to God. He was never scared along his journey because if he did die, he felt that it would just be in service to God and to the Creator. So he had no fear of dying, even though numerous people, including native tribes who were actually living in the regions, told him to turn around and to go back. He had no fear of dying, I should say. And he was a successful kind of explorer in that right, is that he was not afraid to go where other people were. Other than to the end, obviously, because the Spanish and Spanish retaliation. He was scared of them because he did not know kind of what to expect from them. But thank you for listening. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Thank you for listening to my video. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, kind of questions, anything at all, feel free to ask them in the discussion board link. I want to thank you again. Appreciate it. I look forward to watching other people's videos. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.